Jake Morrison stood in the marble halls of the Galactic Council chambers and felt sick to his stomach. The massive room held representatives from 47 different alien species, and every single one of them looked at him with disgust. The Vorthek delegation moved their tentacles in patterns that meant they were angry. The crystal beings called Zephyrians glowed with colors that showed they did not like what they saw. Jake had been Earth's ambassador to this council for 5 years, and every day had been worse than the last. Council Prime Zarian sat at the front of the room like a giant insect king. His compound eyes reflected the lights as he clicked his sharp mouth parts together. Jake knew that sound meant Zarian was about to say something terrible about humans again. The human species continues to show us why they can never be full members of this council, Zarian said in his buzzing voice. Their military ships carry too many weapons. They expand to new worlds too fast. They solve problems with violence. Instead of talk, Jake felt his hands form fists at his sides. Admiral Lisa Carter stood next to him, her face hard as stone. Chief Diplomat Ryan Brooks and Science Advisor Helen Davis were there too, all of them trying to stay calm while these aliens insulted their entire species. This was not new. For 30 years, humans had fought wars for these aliens. Human soldiers had died protecting alien worlds. Human ships had been destroyed defending alien colonies. Human families had lost fathers and mothers and children in battles across the galaxy, and what did humans get in return? Nothing but insults and rejection. Every time humans asked to join the council as full members, the answer was always no. Humans were too violent, too aggressive, too primitive. But when alien worlds were attacked, who did they call for help? Humans. When pirates raided alien trade routes, who did they beg to stop them? Humans. When wars broke out between alien species, who did they demand should make peace? Humans. Jake had watched this happen over and over again. Humans were good enough to die for these aliens, but not good enough to sit at their table as equals. The breaking point came when Counselor Vexthal stood up. Vexthal was from the Hegemony faction, and he hated humans more than any other alien in the room. His pale skin seemed to glow with cold light as he spoke. "Perhaps we should discuss the human question in a more permanent way," Vexthal said, his voice like ice. "This species has shown they cannot grow beyond their primitive warrior nature. I propose we begin formal containment protocols." The room went completely silent. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Containment protocols meant humans would be trapped in their current space. No new colonies, no expansion, no freedom to explore the galaxy. They would be prisoners in their own corner of space. Admiral Carter stood up slowly. Her hand moved to rest on the weapon at her side. "Counselor Vexthal, are you saying that humanity should be locked away for being good soldiers when you needed?" "Yes. Your species is useful as a military tool," Vexthal replied. "Nothing more. You lack the sophistication for true galactic citizenship." Those words hung in the air like poison. Jake looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Not one of them looked sorry for Vexthal's words. Not one of them seemed to care that humans had died for them. These beings had called human fleets to save their worlds. They had begged human marines to fight their wars. They had pleaded with human engineers to rebuild their cities after battles. Now they talked about humans like they were wild animals that needed to be caged. Jake reached into his bag and pulled out a small device. It was humanity's formal application to join the Galactic Council, submitted 5 years ago with hope and respect. He looked at Prime Zarian, then at Vexthal, then at all the other aliens who thought humans were not good enough for their club. Without saying a word, Jake crushed the device in his hand. The electronic parts sparked and died. The United Earth Federation withdraws its application for Galactic Council membership, Jake said loud enough for everyone to hear. We also withdraw from all military agreements with Council member species. The room exploded with shocked voices, but Jake kept talking. Humanity has protected this galaxy for 30 years. We have lost millions of our people defending worlds that now call us barbarians. We have given our resources, our ships, and our children to species that think we are nothing but useful savages. Admiral Carter stepped forward. All human military forces are being recalled to Earth Federation space immediately. Any Council ships in human territory have 72 hours to leave. Any requests for military help will be refused. Helen Davis activated her communication device. All human research projects with alien species are ended. All technology sharing is stopped. All cultural exchange programs are cancelled. The Vorthic representative's tentacles turned white with fear. You cannot abandon your duties to Galactic civilization. Jake smiled, but it was not a nice smile. Watch us. The human delegation walked toward the massive doors of the chamber. Chief Diplomat Brooks stopped at the entrance and turned back to face the aliens. You wanted to know if humanity could evolve beyond our warrior instincts, Counselor Vexthal, Brooks said. You are about to find out what happens when those instincts are no longer protecting you. The great doors closed behind the humans with a sound like thunder. For the first time in 30 years, the galaxy stood without humanity's protection. Jake. Morrison walked through the corridors of the Council station toward the human diplomatic ship that would take them home. Behind him, he could hear the aliens arguing and shouting. Some sounded angry, others sounded scared. All of them sounded like they were beginning to understand what they had just lost. As the human ship pulled away from the Council station, Jake looked back at the massive structure floating in space. It had been built to represent the unity of galactic civilization. Now it represented something else entirely. It represented the place where humanity had been told they were not good enough, not civilized enough, not worthy enough to be treated as equals. The aliens in that station had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to stand alone. 6 months had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, and everything had changed. Admiral Pete Rogers stood on the bridge of his newest ship, the UEF Defiance, watching massive defense platforms take their positions around Earth's solar system. Each platform was bigger than most alien warships and carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Give me a status report, Rogers said to his crew. Commander Amy Sullivan looked at her data screen. All outer colonies have been turned into fortresses. The Kepler defense grid is working perfectly. New Canberra shipyards are building 3 times as many ships as before the Council incident. And sir, the new recruits are amazing. Military applications have gone up by 400% since we left the Council. Rogers nodded with satisfaction. The insult from the Galactic Council had woken something up in humanity that had been sleeping for years. Young people who had spent their lives working peaceful jobs were joining the military in huge numbers. They were angry about how the aliens had treated their species, and they wanted to prove that humanity was strong enough to stand alone on Earth below. President Kate Hamilton was speaking to the Earth Federation Parliament. Her words were being sent to every human world through the quantum communication network that connected all human colonies. My fellow humans, Hamilton said, her voice steady and strong, we are at a turning point in our history. For 30 years, we bowed down to species that saw us as nothing more than attack dogs. We lost our young people on alien battlefields. We protected worlds that hated us. We begged for acceptance from those who wanted to put us in cages. The Parliament building was completely quiet. Every representative listened to her words carefully. Not anymore, Hamilton continued, her voice getting louder. Humanity will make its own path among the stars. We will build a civilization that does not need any council's permission to exist. We will show the galaxy what humans can do when we stop asking for their approval and start demanding their respect. Far away on Mars, director Chris Morgan was running the biggest construction project in human history. The Red Planet's factories worked day and night, making not just weapons and ships, but everything needed for humans to live completely on their own. Robot mining ships stripped metals from asteroids while fusion reactors powered manufacturing centers that were bigger than anything the Council species had ever built. The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to meet their standards and started beating them. Morgan told his engineering team, every piece of technology we shared with the Council was studied and improved. Every limit they put on us forced us to find better ways to do things. In the research labs on the moon, Dr. Rachel Green made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the old files from Council research projects, she found proof of something that made her very angry. The Council had not just been limiting humanity's weapons. They had been deliberately holding back human technology for decades. "They were scared of us," she whispered to her partner, Dr. Paul Martinez, as they read through the secret documents. "Every time we invented something new, they found ways to stop our research. Every time we developed something that might make us stronger, they buried it in paperwork and delays." The truth was shocking. Human progress had been artificially slowed down for years by a council that was afraid of what humans might accomplish. If they were allowed to reach their full potential. Dr. Green's discovery reached Admiral Rogers within hours. As he read the report, his face got darker with each page. "They did not just insult us," he said to Commander Sullivan. "They crippled us. For 30 years, they kept us weak and dependent while using us as their personal army." The news spread through the human fleet like fire. Anger turned into cold determination as people learned the full truth about the Council's betrayal. The aliens had not just been dismissive of humans. They had been actively working to keep humanity from becoming too powerful. As the months went by, the galaxy began to notice the changes happening in human space. Trade routes that had been protected by human ships were now being attacked by pirates. Border fights that had been stopped by human peacekeepers turned into full wars. The Council's own military forces, weakened by decades of depending on human help, could barely keep order in their own territory, but humanity no longer cared about galactic order. They were building something new, something that would show what they could achieve when they were no longer held back by alien rules. The fortress walls around human space grew stronger every day, and behind them, a civilization was being reborn in fire and anger. News reports from across the galaxy told the same story. The hegemony faction was expanding aggressively into territory that had once been protected by human forces. 3 different species were fighting over mining rights in the Vega sector. Pirate fleets were raiding trade convoys with no fear of human retaliation. The Council had sent several messages to Earth asking for help with the growing chaos. Each message was more desperate than the last. But humanity's response was always the same: silence. President Hamilton held a press conference to address the galaxy's pleas for help. "For 30 years we bled for species that called us barbarians. We died for worlds that despised us. We sacrificed everything for people who saw us as tools to be used and discarded. Now they want us to come back and clean up their mess?" She paused, looking directly into the camera that would broadcast her words across the galaxy. "They made their choice when they decided we were not good enough for their council. Now we have made ours. Humanity stands alone and we stand strong." The transformation of human space continued at an incredible pace. New weapons were developed that made the old council restrictions look like jokes. Defensive systems were built that could protect entire star systems from invasion. Most importantly, humanity's spirit was changing from one of seeking acceptance to one of demanding respect. The galaxy was learning what it meant to live without humanity's protection, and humanity was learning what it meant to be truly free. 2 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was falling apart. Without human peacekeepers to stop fights, old enemies were going to war again across dozens of star systems. The hegemony faction, feeling brave, without humans to stop them, had begun attacking their neighbors and taking their worlds. Trade routes collapsed as pirates took over areas that used to be safe, but in the deepest parts of space, something much more dangerous was moving. Commander Tony Clark ran the deep space watching station called Watchtower 7. It sat at the edge of human space where the galaxy's stars became thin and dark. His crew of 30 people operated the most advanced sensor equipment humanity had ever built, watching for threats that might come from the empty darkness between stars. "Commander, we are picking up something strange," said sensor operator Linda Phillips, looking worried at her screens. Long-range sensors are finding massive energy readings about 200 light-years beyond the galaxy's edge. Clark walked over to her station and studied the data flowing across her displays. Natural event? No, sir. These readings look like huge industrial activity. Shipbuilding, massive construction projects, energy weapons testing. Philip stopped talking, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Sir, whatever is out there, it is big. Bigger than anything we have ever seen. The idea sent a cold feeling down Clark's back. In the vast emptiness between galaxies, something was building a war machine. Meanwhile, on the Council homeworld of Zarian Prime, an emergency meeting was happening. The great chamber that had once been filled with confident speeches about humanity's unfitness now echoed with barely controlled fear. The hegemony has taken control of the Vega sector, reported military coordinator Zarthel, his usually steady voice shaking. Without human help, our forces cannot stop their expansion. They have weapons technology that our spies failed to identify. Prime Zarian's compound eyes dimmed with worry. What about our own military abilities? Surely we can copy human fighting. Methods for our own forces. We tried, Zarthel replied. Our species lacks the aggressive instincts that made human soldiers so effective. Our crews hesitate where humans would attack, try to talk where humans would fight. We are learning that military skill cannot be simply copied. In the diplomatic section of the station, Ambassador Derek Stone watched the proceedings through intercepted communications. Stone had been humanity's representative to the Council for many years. The irony was clear to him. The same species that had called humanity too violent for civilized society were now complaining about their own inability to match human fighting effectiveness, but Stone was focused on something else entirely. His spy network, built over decades of diplomatic work, had discovered disturbing reports from across the galaxy. Ships were disappearing along the outer edge territories. Entire colonies were going silent without sending distress calls. In each case, the missing settlements were located along a path that led directly toward the center of the galaxy. Something is coming, Stone said quietly to his aide, Captain Marie Foster. Something that makes the hegemony's expansion look like a small border fight. His fears were confirmed when Dr. Ellen Cross, head of the Human Alien Biology Research Division, told him about her latest findings. Deep in the classified files, she had found references to an ancient threat that the Council had deliberately hidden from humanity. They call them the Devourers, Dr. Cross explained, her voice tight with controlled fear. An alien species from outside our galaxy that invaded once before, about 50,000 years ago. According to the records, they eat entire worlds, taking all organic matter and rare elements before moving to the next target. Stone felt the blood drain from his face. What stopped them last time? A coalition of species that included the ancestors of the current Council races. But the cost was enormous. Entire civilizations were wiped out in the war. The survivors promised to stay alert for their return. And they never told us about this threat? Dr. Cross shook her head. The record suggests they believed humanity was too unstable to be trusted with such knowledge. They feared we would become obsessed with preparing for war against an enemy that might never return. The revelation explained so much about the Council's behavior, their restrictions on human military development, their insistence on controlling human expansion, their fear of human technology advancement. All of it had been driven by terror of what humanity might become if they knew about the Devourers. Back on Watchtower 7, Commander Clark received an urgent message from Earth Federation Command. The message was short but frightening. Recall all deep space patrols. Implement Defense Protocol Omega. Humanity stands alone. As Clark watched his patrol ships return to formation, he could not shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to face something that would make their previous fights seem like children's games. In the darkness between stars, an ancient enemy was stirring, and humanity, cut off from the rest of galactic civilization, would have to face it alone. The reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. 12 star systems had gone completely dark in the past month. No distress signals, no Evacuation calls, just silence. When Council investigation ships finally reached these systems, they found empty worlds stripped of all life and resources. Dr. Cross worked frantically in her laboratory, trying to understand the enemy from the few records the Council had kept. "They are not like anything we have encountered before," she told Stone during one of their emergency meetings. "They do not just conquer worlds, they consume them completely. Every living thing, every useful mineral, every drop of water. They leave nothing behind but dead rock." The scale of the threat was becoming clear. This was not an invasion that could be stopped with conventional warfare. This was an extinction event that threatened every living thing in the galaxy. And the Council, in their arrogance and fear, had ensured that humanity, the galaxy's most effective military force, would face this threat as enemies rather than allies. The question was no longer whether humanity belonged in the galactic community. The question was whether any of them would survive what was coming from the dark spaces between the stars. The first real sign of the Devourer's return did not come as a massive invasion fleet, but as terrible silence. The outer colonies of the Zarian Commonwealth simply stopped sending messages, their communication beacons going dark one by one across 3 entire star systems. When the Council's investigation ships finally arrived, they found nothing but empty shells of worlds, their surfaces stripped completely clean of all life and valuable materials. Admiral Kevin Ross commanded the human deep space fleet from his flagship, the UEF Retribution, when the emergency message reached them. The transmission came not from Earth Federation Command, but from Prime Zarian himself. The same alien leader who had once called humanity unfit for galactic society was now begging for their help? "Human Fleet Commander," the message began, with Zarian's usual arrogance replaced by desperate fear, "we require immediate assistance. The ancient enemy has returned. The Devourers are consuming our outer territories. Our forces are inadequate." Ross studied the tactical display showing the spreading zone of destruction. 12 star systems had gone completely dark in the past week, their populations numbering in the billions, simply vanishing without any trace. The scale of the disaster was beyond anything the galaxy had faced in living memory. "Sir," asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Palmer, "should we respond?" Ross was quiet for a long moment, remembering all the insults and rejections humanity had endured. Then he thought about the billions of lives being consumed by an enemy that cared nothing for species or politics. "Open a channel to Earth Federation." "Command," he ordered. "Priority Alpha." Within hours, President Hamilton was speaking to an emergency session of the Federation Parliament. The chamber was packed with representatives from every human world, their faces showing the seriousness of the moment. "Members of Parliament," Hamilton began, "we face a choice that will define humanity's place in the galaxy. The Council that rejected us, that called us barbarians and tried to contain us, now begs for our protection against an enemy they hid from us for decades." The debate that followed was intense. Representative Bill Murphy from the Mars colonies argued for ignoring the Council's pleas. "Let them face the results of their arrogance. They made it clear we are not welcome in their civilized society." But Representative Lisa Torres from the outer colonies disagreed. "We are not doing this for the Council. We are doing this because it is who we are. Humanity does not abandon people to die, even if those people abandoned us first." The vote was close, but humanity's nature won in the end. The Federation would respond to the threat not as subjects begging for acceptance, but as equals demanding respect. The mobilization was unlike anything ever seen before. Every human fleet, every defensive platform, every advanced weapon system developed during their isolation was committed to the fight. The fortress walls around human space opened for the first time in 2 years, and humanity's war machine emerged completely transformed. Admiral Ross led the combined human fleet to the battle zone, arriving to find the Council's forces in full retreat. The Devourer ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They were vast, organic-looking vessels that seemed to eat space itself, leaving trails of darkness behind them as they moved. "All ships, battle stations," Ross commanded as his Fleet formed up. Remember, we are not fighting for the Council's approval. We are fighting for the galaxy's survival. The battle that followed would be remembered as the turning point of the war. Human ships, no longer limited by Council restrictions, unleashed weapons that had been deemed too dangerous for civilized warfare. Plasma cannons that could crack, planets, quantum torpedoes that folded space, and AI-guided fighters that moved faster than living reflexes could track, but the Devourers were not easily defeated. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more came out of the darkness. They adapted to human tactics with frightening speed, their vessels growing new defenses and weapons in real time. The breakthrough came when Dr. Ellen Cross, working frantically in her mogul laboratory aboard the command ship, discovered the Devourer's weakness. They are not just consuming matter, she reported to Admiral Ross. They are consuming the quantum foundation of space itself. But that makes them vulnerable to subspace resonance weapons. We do not have subspace resonance weapons, Ross replied grimly. We do now, Cross said, uploading her modifications to the fleet's weapon systems. I have changed our plasma cannons to generate standing waves in the quantum foam. It should break apart their molecular structure. The modified weapons proved devastatingly effective. Devourer ships that had ignored conventional attacks began to dissolve when hit by the resonance beams. For the first time since their arrival, the ancient enemy was forced to retreat, but victory came at a terrible cost. The human fleet had lost 30% of its ships, and the Devourers had only shown the advance guard of their forces. Deep space sensors detected massive formations still approaching from the void between galaxies. As the surviving human ships regrouped, Admiral Ross received a transmission from Prime Zarian. The Council leader's image appeared on the main screen, his compound eyes reflecting something that might have been shame. Admiral Ross, Zarian began, his voice heavy with exhaustion. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize. We were wrong about humanity. We were wrong about everything. Ross's expression remained unchanged. Your apology is noted, Prime Zarian, but this is not about apologies anymore. This is about survival. And if we are going to survive, we are going to do it as equals. The transmission ended, leaving Ross alone with his thoughts. The galaxy had finally seen what humanity was truly capable of when unleashed, but the real test was still coming. The main Devourer force was still out there in the darkness, and it would take everything the galaxy had to stop them. The question was whether the Council species could put aside their prejudices long enough to fight alongside the barbarians they had once rejected. The final battle for the galaxy's survival took place in the empty space between star systems, where darkness itself had become a weapon. Admiral Ross commanded a fleet unlike any in galactic history. Human ships flew alongside Council vessels, their crews united not by politics or diplomacy, but by the simple desire to survive. The Devourers had revealed their true strength. Massive world ships the size of small moons moved through space, each one capable of consuming entire star systems. They moved like living things, their surfaces rippling with organic technology that made no sense to galactic science. At their center was something that human sensors could barely detect. A vessel so vast it registered as a small planet, its presence bending space and time around itself. Fleet status, Ross commanded from the bridge of the Retribution. Combined human and Council forces number 8,000 ships, reported Captain Jane Roberts, his fleet coordinator. The Devourers have deployed approximately 12,000 vessels, including 47 world ships and that thing at the center of their formation. The thing was what Dr. Cross had identified as the Devourer Queen ship, a vessel that served as both command center and birth chamber for the species. If it could be destroyed, the entire Devourer fleet would lose coordination and become vulnerable to normal attack, but reaching it would require flying through the most concentrated enemy formation the galaxy had ever seen. Sir, came a transmission from the Council flagship. Prime Zarian requests permission to address the combined fleet. Ross nodded. Put him through. The alien leader's image appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. Gone was the arrogance that had marked their previous meetings. In its place was something that looked almost like humility. Warriors of humanity. Zarian began, his voice carrying across the quantum communication network. For 30 years we called you barbarians. We called you unsuitable for civilized society. We were fools. He paused, his compound eyes dimming with what might have been regret. We see now that civilization is not defined by how peaceful one can be in times of safety, but by how willing one is to fight when everything is at stake. You have that willingness. We do not. The admission sent waves of shock through the council. Ships. Never before had a prime Zarian acknowledged the superiority of another species. But, Zarian continued, perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the galaxy needs both kinds of people. Those who build and preserve, and those who fight and protect. We offer you not just alliance, but true partnership. Equal voices in a new council. One that recognizes that strength and wisdom can take many forms. Ross considered the offer. After years of insults and rejection, it would have been easy to refuse. But he thought of the billions of lives hanging in the balance, and the future his species would inherit. Accepted, he said simply, but after we win this war. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships, their crews fighting with the desperation of a species that had been abandoned, tore through devourer formations with tactics that horrified and amazed their alien allies. They rammed enemy vessels when ammunition ran low, detonated their own ships to create gaps in enemy lines, and fought with an intensity that made the devourers themselves seem civilized, but it was the combined efforts of all galactic species that ultimately turned the tide. Council ships provided covering fire while human vessels made their desperate attacks. Alien scientists worked alongside human engineers to develop new weapons. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years fought side by side against the common threat. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Commander Steve Adams, piloting the experimental fighter Wolverine, managed to penetrate the Queen ship's defenses. His ship, modified with Dr. Cross's resonance technology, carried a payload that could tear through the massive vessel's core. "This is Adams," came his transmission as he guided his damaged fighter toward the Queen ship's heart. "I am not making it out of this one, Admiral, but I am taking this thing with me." The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away. The Queen ship's death sent shockwaves through the Devourer fleet, and one by one, their vessels began to drift aimlessly through space. Without their guiding intelligence, they were just massive, empty shells in the aftermath. As rescue ships searched for survivors and repair crews worked to fix damaged vessels, the galaxy took stock of what had been lost and what had been gained. The human fleet had been devastated. Of the 4,000 ships that had entered the battle, less than 800 remained operational. But they had saved the galaxy, and in doing so, had finally earned the respect that had been denied them for so long. President Hamilton stood before the reformed Galactic Council 6 months later, representing not a beggar species asking for acceptance, but a founding member of a new galactic order. The council chambers had been rebuilt on a human world, and for the first time in galactic history, humans held equal representation with all other species. "The price of peace," Hamilton said in her first address, "is eternal vigilance, not just against external threats, but against the prejudices and fears that divide us. Humanity learned that lesson in isolation. The galaxy learned it in war." She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives of 47 species, all of whom now looked at humanity with respect rather than disdain. "We are stronger together than apart. But strength without wisdom is tyranny, and wisdom without strength is helplessness. The galaxy needs both warriors and philosophers, builders and protectors. It needs all of us." The applause that followed was genuine, born not of political necessity, but of hard-won understanding. Humanity had abandoned the Galactic Council, and in doing so, had forced the galaxy to confront the price of their prejudice. The universe had paid that price in blood and fire, but from the ashes had risen something stronger than what came before. The galaxy would never again mistake civility for weakness, or peace for defenselessness, and humanity would never again beg for acceptance from those who should have recognized their worth from the beginning. The age of human isolation was over. The age of true galactic unity had begun.